It's a very, very, very harmful gas. Bless you. Very harmful gas here on Earth. It can hurt us in the environment. So to get rid of NOx by putting a rich mixture with that rhodium, it's almost like a lumberjack standing there with an axe. So the rich mixture being the lumberjack and the precious metal being the axe. If we had an axe there with nobody to swing it, nothing happens, right? And vice versa. If we had a lumberjack there with no axe, he can't split the log either. So getting a rich mixture in the front of the cat creates that reduction where it splits that NOx up. The nitrogen goes right out the tailpipe because it's harmless, but the oxygen that came off that NOx goes to the back half of the cat, what we call the oxidation section. And it's like a huge mall parking lot. But instead of cars, it's oxygen molecules. Does that make sense? We store oxygen there. We store it there this way when the rich mixture comes to the back half of the cat, the oxygen and the precious metals in the back, platinum and palladium, react with the oxygen to oxidize or cook off the rest of these harmful gases. And it turns hydrocarbon and carbon monoxide into basically water, nitrogen, and carbon dioxide. That's how it works. But the idea to make that cat work properly is we have to have very proper feed gas, and it's got to go slightly rich to make the front half work, and slightly lean to make the rich half work. And if we don't do that just right, the cat can't work, and we get heavy pollutants coming out the tailpipe. That's the name of the game for all cars in the United States of America at minimum, following OB2 emission standards. The cat has to work. That's the end game. So, short. Means that all the existing components within that feed gas turn into something different. That's stoichiometry. Stoichiometry for gasoline is around 14.7 to 1 air fuel mixture. So again, the O2 sensor rides at about 900 millivolts, give or take, when it detects a lack of oxygen in the exhaust stream. It rides about 200 millivolts when it detects an abundance of oxygen in the exhaust stream. So the O2 sensor does this when it sees a lean mixture, and it does this when it sees a rich mixture. Fuel trim is that corrective factor. Short-term fuel trim is a correction to this. So what happens is this. If this is fuel trim here, okay, and this is 0, and this is positive 25, and this is negative 25, I'll get out of the way here in a second. We start off here as this oxygen sensor starts to trend down. Let's say it gets to around 200 millivolts here. The computer, this switch is very close to stoichiometry, up and down. It's when it's really accurate. The computer will start to add fuel. It's going to add fuel until this starts to switch. And when this starts to go this way, once it crosses a threshold here, the computer's going to start taking away fuel until this switches again. And it's going to add fuel and take away fuel and add fuel. Right there, that's usually plus or minus, oops, this is harder to do than I thought. Plus or minus 5% is what we like to see when we say a car is in good fuel control. So again, all this up and down with the oxygen sensor and fuel trim is designed to satisfy the functionality of the cat. I know I spit a lot at you, but does it make sense, the method to their madness here? What we're trying to accomplish? It does? Base fuel calculation or an injector misfire or anything like that. And we don't consider it to be a global problem, whatever it is, because it's only one cylinder. Does that make sense? So if it was something having to do with a mass airflow sensor, wouldn't you expect that to affect all the cylinders? This says it's cylinder number 1 that's misfiring. Assuming our scan tool is right. Can scan tools make mistakes?
Yes.
Yeah, they can. I've seen people pull the wrong cylinder heads. Yeah, because they got a PO301, it was actually cylinder number 4 that was Yeah, and that happens. That does happen, they assume. That problem's not as prevalent as it was in years past. The software's gotten a lot stronger, so you don't have to worry about that as much anymore. So again, we're going to apply our 4-step process just like we did earlier. Operating the vehicle at idle, operating the vehicle at elevated RPM with no load, operating under brake torque, which is low RPM and high load, and then wide open throttle if need be, which is very high RPM and very high load, puts the engine under all the operating conditions basically available for it to run, And we're going to look back at our fuel trim to infer when our fault is or is not present. We're going to use that as a diagnostic step. So at idle, no load, let's analyze the data here. By way of where our cursor is plotted here, we see we are in fuel control here because the O2 sensor is going up and down. This is bank 2, sensor 1. But look at bank 1, sensor 1, meaning one half of the engine's oxygen sensors versus the other one. What are you seeing different from one to the other? What do you guys see? What looks different from this one to this one? Is it a difference in amplitude? High to low? It's more active, meaning more frequency, right? This is what we should be seeing. This is what we're seeing here. Remember I told you an oxygen sensor doesn't really sense oxygen or fuel, lack thereof? There's catalysis that actually takes place in that sensor. This is the part that I don't want to deviate down that path because, again, I can spend a lot of time talking about it. But as that oxygen from the misfiring cylinder gets pumped downstream, and then it disappears, and then it appears again, every time that cylinder misfires, that causes that rapid up and down oscillation. What I'm getting at here is this is free info for you guys. This is a strong indication that there's a misfire taking place